Let me welcome to the show. She is our cousin from another mother, the one and only Jane Elliott. Welcome.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you said experience instead of experiment. That's things you're looking up.
Yes, yeah. Last time man, I felt like I was in class. I got my knuckles wrapped. It was terrible.
Okay, now you're going to learn something else today. What map do you have on the map, the wall behind you? Is that the Mercator projection?
This is the map that has Africa bigger than it should be, but it's not 5 times bigger, which is what it should be, right?
No. How big is Greenland? That's what's important. How big is Greenland on that
I
map?
don't know. Where is
Well,
Greenland?
that's so you get rid of that map just as soon as
Okay.
you can,
Okay.
because South America is actually 9 times larger than Greenland.
Wow.
Okay.
That's a fact. South America is 9 times larger than Greenland, but we have been using that map for many years to show white people that they are the largest group of people because they have the most land on the earth, and it's not true. So you need to get the Peters projection map. Write that down. Peters projection map. P-E-T-E-R-S. Peters projection map, and you can get it from capital O, capital D, capital T, maps.com. Everybody should have that map because they now have that map in the Boston Public School classrooms because the Mercator map is so incorrect. Okay?
All right. Let me ask you this.
Okay, go ahead.
Almost 60 years ago, 50-something years ago, you did this brilliant exercise. But here we are in 2020, and not much has changed. Why is that, Jane Elliott?
Number one, I didn't invent the exercise. I learned it from Adolf Hitler. And that's why when you look out of your house and your window today and you watch what's happening, you walk down the street, you watch television, you listen to our fearless leader, you don't understand until you catch on that what's happening now is exactly what Hitler did in Germany from 1933 until 1945. And there's a reason for that, because this person has in his bedside table in a locked drawer the writings of Adolf Hitler. Now, the reason things are so similar now to what they were then is because he is using techniques that he learned from the expert in dividing and conquering people. You need to realize that, and I think most people don't. For the last 3 years, I've thought, this is Hitlerian. What in the devil is going on? And I thought it was hysterical. I thought it was wrong. And then I read the book, When at Times the Mob is Swayed, by Bert Newborn. Everybody has to read that book. When at times the mob is swayed. And you're going to learn something that you wish you didn't know. But you are also going to learn something, if you read it in the next 2 months, that will change the way you vote. You will say no to the people who are trying to take away votes from Joe Biden. I have no love for Joe Biden or anybody else in politics, but those who are going to either not vote or vote for somebody other than Joe Biden need to realize that those who forget the mistakes of the past are doomed to repeat them. We did that when Mr. What's-His-Face was running for president 4 years ago. People said, well, I'm just not going to vote. I don't like either one of them. So we got stuck with this mess that we're in. You must not let that happen again. Whether or not you like Joe Biden has nothing to do with it. The problem is we have to change what's going on, and we won't by taking votes away from the Democrats. And I just think it's so insane that people would even think of thinking it's clever to try to defeat the one Democrat who knows what he's doing, who knows what he's talking about, knows what he's doing. And Joe Biden knows what he's doing. Barack Obama taught him, and he listened, and he knows what he's doing, and he can change this situation. We are so fortunate to have had 8 years of Barack Obama and his blackness. Make no mistake about this. He knew what he knew, and he knows what he knows because of what he has experienced as a black man in the United States of America. And Joe Biden was very close to him, and they are still very close, and we need to listen to a man who knows what's going on with the black population. We cannot go on this way any longer. You and I are cousins. There's no doubt about that. We are 30th to 50th cousins, and cousin is just a word you use, but it's a serious word for me because we all have the same ancestor back there 300,000 to 500 years ago, 500,000 years ago, and that person was very, very dark brown because he was exposed to a lot of sunlight. And your body produces a lot of melanin if you're exposed to a lot of sunlight. You need to realize that that's the reason for skin color. And the only reason my skin color is lighter than yours is because your ancestors moved farther and farther from the equator, and as they moved farther from the equator, their bodies produce less melanin. So I am not white. My shirt's white, my skin is not. I am what we should be calling melanemic, because if you don't have enough iron in your blood, you are anemic. If you don't have enough melanin in your skin, you are melanemic. Now, it isn't a bad thing to be, but it's different from being white. We are not melanemic enough to be white. We are not white. White was chosen because it's the symbol of purity and goodness. Black is the opposite of purity and goodness. So we use white and black in very casual ways, and we have to put a stop to that. We have to stop using the words of the 14th and 15th century to deal with problems in the 21st century. We all have to grow up and grow out of that nonsense. You and
Jane
I
Elliott
are neither
is here.
black nor white. You aren't black and I'm not white. We are both shades of brown. Get over it.
Jane Elliott, she's here.
Yeah, she is.
So let me ask you this. Even Trump having in his nightstand a manifesto, a blueprint from Hitler, he could not have gotten to power if America wasn't already in that situation. 1968, we've from 1968 when you first decided to do this to now, we have seen a drumbeat. Trump is a symptom. He's not the disease. He's not the virus. He's a symptom.
Well,
What you say?
You won't understand it until you read Robert Reich's book, The System, Who Rigged It and How to Fix It. Everybody has to read that because you need to know that Mr. Trump couldn't be where he is if it hadn't been for some people who realized that we've got about 30% of our population who is angry because we had a black man in the White House for 8 years. And I remember when Richard Nixon said to a group of reporters, I'm trying to save the White House for you white people. Now, I think the first thing we have to do is change the name of the White House to the President's Residence, because calling it the White House sent exactly the wrong message. It's time to change the word, time to change the language we use. Words are the most powerful weapon devised by humankind. And if you call the President's Residence the White House, that tells you who we expect to be in there. We have 30% of the people who want to agree with the Ku Klux Klan, and the Klan is wrong. And when somebody tells them, look, fellas, your robes are white, but your skin is shades of brown, get over it. We have to stop this idiocy of believing in those two colors. I don't exist. The white people do not exist, except if you want to find out what it's like to be without any melanin or practically no melanin, get on the net and log into Tanzania, and then look at what happens to albinos in Tanzania. You will be absolutely thunderstruck and furious and think, oh, my God, how could people treat one another that way? And then look at the history of the United States of America. And we have treated people of color in this country exactly, over the 300 years, exactly the way they treat people who are albinos in Tanzania. And we call ourselves civilized? I don't think so. I think we've got the language all wrong.
Miss Elliott, I just want to start by saying thank you for all of the nuggets that you just dropped. I have a trail of books that I am now putting into my cart to go order. What would you say, and I know that, as all of us are watching the protests and seeing how, in some ways, remarkably, we're seeing way more white people or melanin, I can't remember the term you used.
Melanemic.
Melanemic, that's it.
Yes. Seeing way more melanemic people out in the streets, in the protests, uplifting the ideals behind Black Lives Matter in ways that are at once inspiring and in other ways a bit disconcerting, because we're still seeing some of the replications of beliefs that melanemic people are better at organizing protests. We've seen a number of situations where people who believe themselves to be white have taken over the protest, sort of usurped the movement in ways. What would you say to the melanemic liberal or the person who believes they are a white liberal about checking their own sense of privilege and superiority, even as they are out in the streets attempting to support an agenda that is promoted by an organization or an ideology like Black Lives Matter?
Wait, I have to deal with several things there. You think that you think that people who have a lot of melanin aren't able to organize? Those first modern human beings who were very, very dark brown left the area of the equator and managed without any modern technology to populate every landmass on the face of the earth. Every person living on the face of the earth today is one of their descendants. And if every one of us would trace our DNA back as far as we could, we would find that part of our DNA came from a country on the continent of Africa. You need to realize that. We all need to realize that. Those people were brilliant. They could organize better than any of us ever have. We think it's wonderful that we got to the moon. JFK said we'll get to the moon in 3 years, and in 3 years we got there. But those brilliant black, so-called black people traveled all that distance and populated every last landmass on the face of the earth without any help from us. And let me remind you something. There would be no us if it hadn't been for them. Every person on the first face of the earth is a descendant of those first modern human beings. Within a few thousand years, several thousand years, after Homo sapiens had appeared on the earth, and those were those first modern human beings, Java man, Peking man, and Neanderthal man had practically disappeared from the face of the earth. However, some of the Neanderthals mated, and some of those others mated with Homo sapiens. And you know that some Neanderthals did because Neanderthals were inclined to abdominal fat, were bullish and brutish, and had orange hair. Now, can you think of anyone who looks like that? And if you can, then you know what we're dealing with. Now, those of us who are angry at these young people on the street, those young people are the future of the world, not just the United States, but of the world. They are remembering what Frederick Douglass said, and he said, "Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. Find out just what any people will quietly submit to, and you have found out the exact measure of injustice and wrong which will be imposed upon them, and those will continue until they are resisted with either words or blows or with both. The limits of tyrants are prescribed by the endurance of those whom they oppress." Now you tell me, after you hear that black people don't know what the devil they're talking about. They know exactly what they're talking about. And that man was saying that before you or I were a gleam in our Father's eye. You know it and I know it, but we don't want to admit it, because if we admit that the people who came before us were black and were smarter than we are undone. White people will be undone if they start hearing the truth. You know that, and I know that. Well, it's time for us to hear the truth. It's time for us to educate in a way that we don't turn out a bunch of nitwits who are willing to vote for a fool like the one we have in the president's residence today. Now, what was your question? I'm sorry. If you want a yes or no answer, call somebody else.
I love it.
Well, whether or not you do, you ask me a question and you'll get an answer. You see, I'm not a teacher. I resent anybody calling me a teacher. I'm an educator. The word educator comes from the root duck deuce, which means lead, the prefix E, which means out, the suffix ate, which means the act of, and the suffix or, which means one who does. An educator is one who is engaged in the act of leading people out of ignorance. And the number one ignorance in the United States of America is the ignorance about skin color. We actually think that there are 3 or 4 different races because, after all, we learned that in biology. It's a lie. There's only one race, and we're all members of the same species. You look around you and see how many children you think you see, and you call them mixed. They aren't mixed. They are the result of members of the same species reproducing together. You can't reproduce a cat. You can't put a cat and a dog together and get a dad or a cub because they're different species. You can put people of different colors together and get beautiful, brilliant, just wonderfully talented and humane human beings. It's time to get over this idea of you must not mate with someone who isn't of your color group. It's garbage, and it has never worked, and it's only been around for about 500 years, so let's dump it. Let's just dump it.
Jane Elliott is here. I just want y'all to know that. In case you didn't know, Jane Elliott is here. 866-801-8255. And Laree, before you ask your questions, you are 87 years old, which to me is the amount of energy you have, the amount of passion that you have, the amount of just not, to be 87. Talk a little bit about what drives you. It's Wellness Wednesday. What keeps you so driven?
Number one, I'm only 86. I won't be 87 until November 30th. So be careful. Don't make me older than I am. It's bad enough. No, it's not bad. What drives me is the fact that people are driven to lie and to believe the lie. As long as that lie is out there and as long as people are believing it, I'm going to be confronting them. And I'm not going to be pleasant about it. I'm not a nice little old lady passing by, catching everyone's eye, sweet and shy. That's not what I am. That doesn't work. It absolutely does not work. We have to put a stop to this. And the reason I keep on doing it, the reason I keep on fighting it is because they keep on doing it. As when they stop doing it, when the racists stop what they're doing, then I can relax and go to my maker. I think he doesn't want me yet because I think he doesn't want a loudmouth where my husband is. I want to be with my husband and my son. I really do, but I don't want to leave this earth not having made a difference. And I think the biggest difference we can make is refusing to go along in order to get along with racism. And that's what we have been doing for the last 3.5 years. It is shocking to me that people in this country are willing to go along with a man who is obviously a case of arrested development. You have 3 ego states, child, parent, and adult. I have never seen him in his adult ego state. I think he doesn't have one. So what we have is a boy grown tall in the president's residence, and we need to fix that, and we need to fix it this fall. We have the opportunity. On November 3rd, we have the opportunity to turn this thing around. And whatever the color of your skin, whatever your religion, whatever your gender orientation, if that's not the problem is what's inside your head. And if inside your head you are willing to go along with something that is absolutely and obviously wrong, then we're in trouble as a nation. We're on the verge right now of losing our democracy. And that is terrifying to me because we do not want to be an oligarchy, and we certainly don't want to be a monarchy with that person as the monarch. Do you
Ms.
wish
Elliott,
you hadn't invited me on? Sorry about that.
Just needed some time to let all of that sink in. I'm thinking about, you said you're not a teacher, and I hear that. But for people across the country right now who are preparing to go back into schools, who are already there, under the auspices of a pandemic, recognizing that the racial achievement gap is going to explode under the remote learning rubrics and things of that nature, what do you say to teachers, to people who are in the classroom, about their responsibility or their role in addressing systemic racism or these beliefs that seem to keep driving at what we're experiencing right now?
Number one, I think it's a big mistake to go back into the classroom as long as COVID-19 is there, too. If that's what you want to teach, there's COVID-19, that you should go back into the classroom. But if you want to save those children, save those lives so that you'll have students next year and so that you'll have people to teach next year, you better hold off on going back into the classroom. Children may be it may be a good thing if the schools provide lunches and what children need that they aren't getting at home. But forget about education. Take it out to them, or take the education out to them, or do something that doesn't endanger those children. You do not have the right to endanger children so that they will be in the presence of a teacher. And some of those teachers aren't people that should be teaching anyway. I'm sorry. I know that teachers aren't going to like me saying this, but you need to realize that little black boys and girls come to school having left their homes, left their families, left their mothers and fathers, for the most part, who absolutely adore them, and think they are important and that they are going to be seen as important and as fully human. They are being taught in many cases by teachers who do not see them that way, who have learned the same dumb thing that the rest of us learned over these years, and who devalue those kids because of those teachers' ideas about skin color. Now, skin color is not the problem and never has been. The ignorance about skin color is the problem. And if teachers can't pass a test proving that they are not racist, they shouldn't be in the classroom. Why are we paying teachers anything to go into a classroom and abuse little black boys and then say, these kids keep dropping out. That's the way they are. They don't value education. By the gods of war, they do value education. But many teachers do not value children of color. You know it, and I know it. And oh, Lord, it would be different if it were just teachers. It isn't just teachers, but teachers get paid to educate people. And what we do in many cases is miseducate people. Instead of offering education in the schools, we are offering indoctrination. We are going to teach you how to be a good American citizen. American citizen. And we encourage children to believe, as our fool in the president's residence does, that America is only those 48 contiguous states, Alaska, Hawaii, and the islands off the southern coast of the United States. That is not all of America. If you look at that map behind you, America is everything from the northernmost point of Canada to the southernmost point of South America. But we call America just these 48 states in Alaska and Hawaii. It's time to put a stop to that. If you're going to say God bless the United States, then say God bless the United States of America instead of saying God bless America. Presidents end with God bless America every time. No, we don't bless anybody north of the United States border, and we don't bless anybody south of the United States border. In fact, we put little children from south of the United States border who are Americans in cages so that they won't come into this country because, as our president has said, we don't want all those brown-skinned people coming in here because they reproduce too rapidly. He is expressing the fear that a whole lot of pale faces fear right now that we are going to be outnumbered. Well, get over it, pale faces. We are going to be outnumbered. Within 30 years, so-called white people will be a numerical minority in the United States of America. That is a demographic fact, and you can whine about it, you can cry about it, you can build fences to keep them out, and you can close Planned Parenthood clinics in order to see to it that white women don't get abortions. It isn't going to work. White pale faces are still going to get abortions, and people of color are going to keep on reproducing. So get used to it, and as somebody sent me this, and I don't remember her name, but this is what everybody should wear. If you're going to talk as a racist, yes. It says,
got a mask.
Get over it.
Get over it.
Get over it. It's a mask that says, get over it. It's time to get over it, people.
As you're talking,
yes, go on.
As you're talking, two things are jumping out. You mentioned Hitler to start off with, and his solution was final, was some sort of genocidal, not some sort of, a genocidal solution. There are people right now afraid to take a vaccine because they believe within this vaccine and because COVID-19 is disproportionately impacting black people in particular, that there's some sort of nefarious, activation with this vaccine that will impact black people. So I just want to.
We've done it before.
Right.
We've done it before. You know about the Tuskegee experiments with black males? We've done it before. Of course, if you act in disastrous and dishonest and disgusting ways, what makes you think that people are going to trust you on your next decision? When you have shown that you don't want people of color in your community, oh my God, a group of midwives, registered nurses, asked me to come and talk to them one day, and I said, why would you ask me to talk to you? I was delivered of 4 children in 5 years, and we found out what was causing that, but I didn't do the delivering. I know nothing about medicine, and she said, that's not what we want to talk. What we want you to talk about? We are all registered nurses, and we want to become midwives, and some of us already are, because we know that black and brown women don't get the same treatment in delivery rooms that white women do. And we want to be sure that we deliver people and treat every one of them fairly. Now think about that. We start with people of color pre-birth. And there are still places in the United States where a black body cannot be buried in the local cemetery. We don't stop with you after you're dead. Now, I'm not exaggerating. These are the things that happen. You know they happen, and if you don't know they happen, and here's another thing you need to know, in case you don't know. If you haven't read the book The Color of Law by Richard Rothstein, get it and read it, because it is absolutely one of the most damning books I've ever read in my life, because he says in there over and over and over, he doesn't say it right out in plain language, but this is what it indicates, that the people who have written our laws over the last 300 years believe in the myth of 3 or 4 different races. And they write laws because of that education, because that, as lawyers, is what they learned, that it is good to keep people separate because those people of other color groups are not equal to our colorless people. And it's a lie. You have to read this book and realize how much your life and your laws are dictated by blatant, ugly racism. It's just, when you read it, you think, why didn't I know that? Why didn't I realize that the reason there's a black area and a not black area in, for instance, Waterloo, Iowa, and the reason that the railroad goes right through that area, And the reason that they've moved out of the big grocery store, the big supermarket, has moved out of the black area, why didn't I realize that those people would have liked, those black people would have liked to have had the same opportunity to get food that those people on the west side of town did? Why didn't I know that those laws were written out of racism? I thought that lawyers didn't do racist things, and I was just as wrong as I could possibly be. And if you think I'm wrong about that and you don't want to read the whole book, just a minute here. Read pages 216 and 217. Just read those 2 pages. Just a minute now. Now, I know I'm talking too much, but I may never get a chance at you again, so I got to say what I can. This says, in the 20th century, federal, state, and local officials did not resist majority opinion with regard to race. Instead, they endorsed and reinforced it actively and aggressively. For the love of God, we have to follow these laws, though they were written in a racist way by racist lawyers. Think about that. We have to, if we're going to change the situation, we have to re-educate the lawyers. We have to re-educate the police departments. We don't need to defund them. We need to take that money to re-educate them. Re-educate them out of the belief in 2 or 3 different races. We have to get that done. And I want that done before I die. And now I get lots of threats against my life. And I have to say to college boys, when I go on a college campus and I'm standing up there talking, there's at least 3 of those boys down there with those red caps on, and white lettering it says, "Make America hate again." It says great again, but it means hate again. And they're talking and pointing at me, and I stop what I'm saying. I say, "Look, fellas, I know what you're talking about. I know what you're saying. I know that you'd like to see me dead because of what I'm doing to try to decrease the level of racism in this country. Well, you can shoot me. I know that. You can kill me. That's not a problem. I'd like to be with my son and my husband, and my other kids will get my estate, so they won't really care that much anyway. However, you need to realize if you kill me, you might make a martyr out of me, and then you might have to spend the rest of your life celebrating Jane Elliott Day once a year. Now, do you want to do that?" And they all they do this and that. No. I say, "Good, thank you. Now, thank you very much. Now, shut up and listen." And they shut up and listen. But by then, the black kids have turned and looked at these 3 little white idiots, and those guys are going, "Ooh." And when the speech is over, they're the first ones to run out of the room because they know that they're in trouble. They were recognized as what they are. So people threaten to kill me all the time. And I say, "Go for it, fool." I fear death not. I don't fear death. I fear living a meaningless life. And living a meaningless life is worse than being dead as far as I'm concerned.
Again, I feel like there are so many droplets that I'm just trying to catch all of them at once. But I want to go back to one thing that you said earlier about the education system, because it really resonated with me and sort of how I've come to see the system of education writ large. But you said that the teacher should be tested for racism. How do we do that? I know there's the implicit bias test, and I know that there's that, but how do we?
Oh, wait a minute. You see, I have a whole big problem with macroaggressions and microaggressions and unconscious bias and conscious bias. And I have no time at all for white privilege. Have you read the white privilege sheet? Have you read that list of white privileges? Every one of them says, I can do this and not be criticized because of my race. I do it because of my race, because of my race, because of my race. People, when Peggy McIntosh wrote that list of white privileges in 1987, she hadn't caught on to the fact that there's only one race. If she had, she wouldn't have used the word my race. Because you see, if she has all those privileges because of her race, and she's the same race as you and I are, then you and I have all those privileges too. Furthermore, there is no white race. So she must know by now. If she hasn't known by now, if she doesn't know by now that there's only one race, then she needs to read the National Geographic magazine for April of 2018. Everybody needs to read the April issue of the National Geographic magazine for 2018. And in that magazine, you will see these pictures. See these pictures? Of all these people of different colors, all of them members of the same race, the human race. And under each one of them is a number and the word Pantone. because these colors of their skin come off the Pantone color wheel. Now, none of the people on this, and there are about 75 people on this list, on these pictures, none of them have skin this color, because this is white. Every one of them is a shade of brown, a very, very dark brown or a very, very light brown, but they're all shades of brown because they all have melanin in their skin. So get over that idea, and if you don't believe anything else I've said, turn to this page in this magazine and look at this map that shows where we started. We, thee and me, started here, and how we managed to travel across the world before Christopher Columbus. Christopher Columbus was black. That's the only reason he could travel as far as he did. That was because of that blackness in his DNA. People, we are all, every person on the face of the earth was started because of what those very, very dark brown people did. You have to get over the idea of several different races. You have to get this out of education. What we are doing in this country is not educating people. It is indoctrinating people to make them into good Americans. And we use maps like the one behind you to prove that we're right about it. It's time to get over this nonsense. The arrogance of melanemic people is absolutely astounding. We've even done it in the church. You can go to any Catholic church in the country and see a picture of a pale-skinned Jesus hanging there. Jesus was, according to what I've learned recently, an Ethiopian Jew. He was dark-skinned. He had dark hair and dark eyes. But you see, what we melanemic people do, when we come into a new environment, we immediately adjust the environment to fit our needs. When people of color come into a new environment, they immediately adjust their needs to fit into the environment. But we, supposedly white people, have adjusted even Jesus to be somebody that looks like somebody we would want to pray to. This is ridiculous, and this is an indication of the smallness of the melanemic mind.
So what do we do when people don't want to accept what you're saying, Jane Elliott? What do we do? Because I'm not afraid of anything either, but I am concerned of the backlash, or the white lash that I call it, of people who want to get rid of everything that makes them have to deal and confront with what you're saying.
You're going to have to deal with it anyway, so deal with it now. Realize that within 30 years, you will be the ones running this show. And you've got to learn how to run this show in a decent manner. And people, melanemic people, have to learn to get used to seeing people who are not pale, male, and stale running the country. We have to bring that about, and we have 30 years in which to get it done. These young people who are out in the street know something that their parents and grandparents don't know. And what they know, and I don't know where they've learned it, but they've obviously learned that if you abuse somebody of color, that you're abusing one of my colorful cousins. And I have a real hard time with people who abuse my colorful cousins because of my colorless cousins' ignorance about skin color. Skin color isn't the problem, never has been the problem. The problem is ignorance about skin color. If you think that having less melanin in my skin makes me smarter than you with more melanin in yours, you're sadly mistaken. And I know that, and you know it too. And the only reason you're letting me rattle on is because you let me say these things because you don't dare. And I know that if I had been black the day I did that blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise in my classroom in Riceville, Iowa, my life wouldn't have been worth a plug nickel. I would have lost my job that day, and I might have lost my life. But because I am a pale face, I got away with it. And because I was right, the superintendent, whom they interviewed several times, they said, why didn't you fire her? You know you could have fired her for doing that. And he said, because I knew in my heart of hearts that what she was doing was right. How could I fire her for being right? So he didn't stand up and defend me, but neither did he fire me. There are adult people in this country, many of whom are veterans of the Second World War or the Korean War or some other ridiculous old men's war, who know the difference, and who have learned the difference the hard way, and who are prepared to let somebody who wants to make a change make that change. Now, the person who's the resident of the president's residence right now does not have that ability to recognize truth and to recognize manhood and to recognize proper behavior. You know that, and I know that. But we have an opportunity to change that too. We need to change it.
We're going to keep fighting. Jane Elliott, I love you. I love you. I love you with every fiber of my being, and I'm so grateful that you're still here, that you're still fighting. And if anybody's listening right now, you're not willing to do at least what she's doing, and you're melanemic, shame on you. Thank you so much for the blueprint. Thank you so much for your scholarship. I love you, Jane Elliott.
And I love you too because you're one of my cousins.
That's right.
And I won't have you abused because of somebody else's ignorance. Okay?
All right.